Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for that time. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous material on the subject of this special order hour.
Without objection.
Thank you. It's my great honor that I rise today to anchor this CBC Special Order Hour. Today, Monday, October 2nd, members of the Congressional Black Caucus will be speaking on the floor about the devastating impact of natural disasters, particularly hurricanes, and the critical role of the federal government's response. In the wake of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and now Maria, the federal government has already deployed assets to affected regions, from HHS Public Health Resources and Coast Guard Urban Search and Rescue Task Force to Corps of Engineers flood fighting projects. In the coming weeks and months, additional resources will help shelter displaced Americans and get businesses back on their feet. Congress must also ensure that the federal response to these disasters is just and equitable, and that communities of color are not directly or indirectly harmed by recovery efforts. During this time, we will hear from other members of the Congressional Black Caucus and its friends to discuss this issue. And for the next 60 minutes, we have a chance to speak directly to the American people on issues of great importance to the Congressional Black Caucus, Congress, and the constituents we represent, and all Americans. At this time, I would like to yield to my colleague, the Honorable Donald Payne of the great state of New Jersey and the city of Newark, to have as much time as he needs to discuss this issue today.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Congresswoman Plaskett, for hosting tonight's special order hour on the federal government's response to natural disasters. I believe that Ms. Plaskett and the experience that she has had in her homeland can open our eyes to the devastation that has taken place in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as well. It is unthinkable what these American citizens have been through over the last several weeks and will continue to suffer from months into the future. But before I begin, I have a message for the families and the friends of the 58 innocent people's lives who were taken and more than 500 who were injured in Las Vegas overnight. The country's compassion and thoughts go out to you. Our hearts break with yours. To those injured, know that the American people are praying for your recovery. And to the first responders who put their lives on the line daily, thank you. What went down in Las Vegas last night was an act of terrorism. There's no other name for it. A deranged man with a small arsenal of firearms in a hotel room shot into a crowd of people at a concert. For an hour and 12 minutes, people watched the chaos unfold. All the moments of silence in the world won't change what happened last night in Las Vegas, last year in Orlando, the year before in Charleston, and the list goes on. Moments of silence used to be for showing honor or respect. There's nothing honorable about keeping silent and doing nothing to prevent gun violence. There's nothing respectful about rejecting every single reasonable gun bill proposed in the past decade. What kind of nation are we when we sacrifice human lives on the altar of the gun lobby? The time to act was yesterday. The federal government has a moral duty to protect the welfare of American citizens before tragedy strikes. Yet when the news moves from one disaster to another, we often suffer a sort of amnesia. We don't seem to remember or learn from our mistakes. We forget to fix the problems of our citizens call us on about every single day, and the problems inevitably repeat themselves. One issue we seem to have repeated amnesia about is the high cost of our constituents face when evacuating a disaster area. Particularly after hurricanes, we read reports that due to reduced capacity and high demand, flights are full or tickets are prohibitively expensive. And even if the airlines cap flight prices like they did last week, federal taxes and fees can increase the price of an evacuation by 20%. Recently, this hit home for me. One of my district staffers had family stuck in Puerto Rico. Because Hurricane Maria knocked out the power and the telephone lines, my staffer had no way of knowing whether her loved ones were alive or dead. Many constituents have contacted our offices to let us know that the difficulty they were having in trying to find out whether their loved ones were safe or not and how we could help. She tried to get in touch with her family for 8 long days before hearing that they were okay. Then when my staffer tried to book a flight for her family to get out of Puerto Rico, the only tickets available were for first class. First class. That's over $700 on a flight full of disaster evacuees. My DC staff did a little digging. Here's what they learned. The American people rely on the goodwill of the airlines to cap the prices of flights from disaster areas. The airlines decide when to start the cap and when it will end. The airlines decide whether to keep selling first-class tickets. And the federal government never stops charging taxes on flights from disaster areas. American citizens deserve better, Mr. Speaker. That's why, starting this week, I will be introducing a series of bills to ease the financial burden Americans face when escaping natural disasters. The Humanitarian Flight Fairness Package will do 4 things. First, it will allow the Secretary of Transportation to declare an aviation humanitarian crisis at specific airports covered by a presidential declaration of emergency. Second, it will allow the Secretary of Transportation to mandate that airlines charge no more than the median fare price of all seats sold on that route in the prior calendar year. Third, the package would require the FAA to waive the $5 and the 60-cent passenger facility charge during an aviation humanitarian crisis. And fourth, the package would require the FAA to waive the U.S. International Transportation Tax, which is $18 on a flight from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. American citizens, Mr. Speaker. Too often Congress reacts to crisis. It is time for us to be proactive. It is time for us to legislate before another disaster strikes. The humanitarian flight fairness package is a common sense solution to a problem that directly affects our constituents. Mr. Speaker, I always try to deal in common sense. As a matter of fact, I have a constituent back at home who constantly reminds me of how shallow I am. So I can do nothing but rely on common sense based on this constituent's feelings about me. But I want to thank the Congresswoman again for hosting this special order hour, and I look forward to continue working with you as you address the issues faced by Americans affected by natural disasters, whether it is on the mainland or in the territories. They all are American citizens. When it benefits this nation to have Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands be a part of the United States, it does not hesitate. But when these American citizens are in trouble, they deserve the same rights that every American citizen benefits from in this great nation. And it is great. And we want to continue to make sure that it remains great. And I continue to make the point, Mr. Speaker, that these are American citizens we're talking about. This is not foreign aid. This is not mutual aid. This is aiding American citizens in trouble, in disaster, in peril. No insulin for diabetics, no dialysis for kidney patients in 2 or 3 weeks. That's a death sentence, Mr. Speaker, and we cannot allow it to continue. And with that, I yield back to the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands.
Thank you so much, Mr. Payne, my colleague, for those sentiments and that support to the people of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and to all the people of the Caribbean region. I'm grateful for your empathy, for your support, the support of your constituents, as well as all the members who have reached out to the Virgin Islands in these last several weeks. The islands have been struck by something that is nothing less than cataclysmic in many respects, particularly in a time of year when we are preparing for what is right now our only viable and large industry, the tourism industry. We've lost that for this year. We've lost that on all of the islands, all of the regions at this time. And I know that so many of you have seen and expressed, so many members on both sides of the aisle have come up to me and said, or texted me or called and said that they are there for me. And I'm going to hold them to that. I'm going to hold them to that. Because what we are facing in the Virgin Islands, I feel guilty right now, and I told my staff, being here, having air conditioning, sitting in a lit room. That feels guilty because I know what the children of the Virgin Islands are going through right now. There is no air conditioning. There is no light on the islands right now. Many of the people, many of the communities are in utter darkness. And as the heat rises with the amount of moisture that's in there, we know that there will be health hazards that are about to happen in terms of mosquitoes, with dengue, chikungunya, and all other kinds of diseases that are going to be occurring.
With the gentlelady yield?
Yes.
Well, let me just say in terms of your guilt, it is not a guilt. It should not be guilt. It is an obligation for you to be here in the people's house to represent your constituents here, to be their voice. That's why they sent you here to Washington. So do not be guilty about doing the job you've been sent to do. And I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I know that that's why I'm here, because I need to be their voice, because they're voiceless right now. If you look on national media, you hear about what's happening in Puerto Rico, and Lord knows I feel for our fellow islanders, our brothers and sisters over there. But very rarely do you hear about what's happening in the Virgin Islands. And on September 6th, Hurricane Irma, one of the most powerful Atlantic storms this century, destroyed the islands of St. John and St. Thomas, the islands that are part of the district that I represent. 3 weeks later, the island of St. Croix was devastated by Maria, a second Category 5 hurricane ripping through the U.S. Virgin Islands in less than a month. Both Hurricanes Irma and Maria have wreaked havoc in the U.S. territories of the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and other Caribbean nations. We forget that there are other places in the Caribbean that have also been struck. St. Martin and St. Martin, Barbuda, Anguilla, our very close neighbors, the British Virgin Islands, Tortola, Anegada, Virgin Gorda, Jost Van Dyke, places that Americans love to go to vacation, to enjoy themselves, not thinking about the lives of the people that are there or not there anymore. We know that right now the island of Barbuda is without an inhabitant in centuries. There is no one on Barbuda after the hurricane. Turks and Caicos, Guadeloupe, Montserrat. One that also strikes me is Dominica. Dominica was not hit by the first hurricane, Irma. And that little island nation reached out to the U.S. Virgin Islands, reached out to Puerto Rico, and said, we don't have much, but we're going to give you the money that we have. We as a government will give you $200,000, we'll bring relief, we'll bring whatever we can. And 2 weeks later, Hurricane Maria struck them and have devastated that island. Their prime minister went to the United Nations a week ago and begged the support of the free world, begged the support of the members of the United Nations to support them. Although the full extent of the two hurricanes' impact has yet to be assessed, it's clear that in the Caribbean, the damage from these storms appears to be unparalleled. President Trump issued major disaster declarations for the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Dozens of deaths and hundreds of injuries have been reported alongside widespread infrastructure damage all throughout the Caribbean. I received a text just this morning from members of my family who are still looking for loved ones on the island of St. Croix. That is why in the days and months ahead, we must continue to work together to ensure that the individual and families impacted by these devastating storms receive all the aid they need. The catastrophic destruction caused by hurricanes Irma and Maria demands massive amounts of aid to address the overwhelming needs of the countless victims who now face the daunting task of rebuilding their lives. FEMA has been on the ground in the Virgin Islands even before Irma hit the islands of St. John and St. Thomas. There are now more than 12,600 federal staff engaged in response and recovery operations from Hurricanes Maria and Irma in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, representing nearly 36 departments and agencies. Storms of this magnitude require the full attention and support of the entire nation. The people of the Virgin Islands have lost their homes and possessions. Businesses have been lost alongside with hospitals, schools, utility systems, and other vital infrastructure. To give you an example, after Irma, Roy Schneider Medical Center, the only hospital on the island of St. Thomas, was partially destroyed. Its roof ripped off, its walls caved in, windows blown out. Patients needed to be evacuated, to the island of St. Croix and to San Juan, to be at Juan Luis Hospital on St. Croix and additional hospitals on San Juan, as well as the Veterans Facility there. Of course, people were thinking that St. Croix after Irma would be the base, as people on St. Thomas and St. John were reeling from the devastation of Irma. Post offices were gone, schools annihilated, mudslides began after additional rains. People in Coral Bay on St. John felt lost, isolated, trapped. Many people had days, almost weeks before they could get out and be in the rest of the public population. But when Maria came, Maria struck what we thought would be our base camp, the island of St. Croix. And as luck would have it, the only functional hospital left in the Virgin Islands, the Hospital of Juan Luis, was breached by Hurricane Maria and has now been condemned by the Army Corps of Engineers. What facility will Virgin Islanders use? Will we continue to be in tents, manned by the brave men and women of our military who have come down to support us? Will we operate from an operating room, an emergency room in a box, is what they've given us thus far? That can't be. We have one functioning operating room that is being held together by the good graces and MacGyvering of the men and women of Juan Luis Hospital right now. Should that be for American citizens? I went on distribution lines. I went to grocery stores where people were waiting for hours. I'm telling you, hours. 3 hours to get gas. 3, 4 hours, the entire time of a curfew, to go on a distribution line to get a couple of packs of water and some MREs for a family. Standing out in the hot Caribbean sun, people were sharing umbrellas, sharing water, singing with each other, trying to keep their spirits up. I met a man who had his veteran's cap on, Vietnam vet, people who are members of the American Legion, and asking me, I fought for this country. I'm an American citizen. Do they think about us? I have not seen us on the news. My family tells me that we're not on the news because, of course, his TV's not working, because almost all of the Virgin Islands is in darkness. We have been able, through the valiant effort of our Water and Power Authority and the linemen and others who are out there, to bring power to critical structures, to our government house, to the main blocks in Christiansted, to parts of Charlotte Amalie, the capital of the Virgin Islands, to the airport, so that relief planes can come in and out. That's who's in light right now. But for so many others, children right now, it is darkness for them. The couple of hours that they have outside of the curfew are to be making the rounds to get ice, to keep insulin refrigerated in their homes, to keep milk for children, formula for babies, cold before it goes bad. That's the daily struggle now of Virgin Islanders, American citizens, veterans, people who pledge their allegiance to this flag, people who are proud to say that they're American citizens. As we saw on the mainland, in the United States following Hurricanes Katrina, Sandy, and most recently Harvey, Americans need to come again together with compassion and care. I've heard commitment from the President and my colleagues in Congress to the U.S. territories receiving the support they need. Moving forward, I'm hopeful but vigilant, and will make sure that they keep to their promise and their commitment that President Trump and this Congress delivers on the promises to support their fellow Americans in the Caribbean region. This is a plea by me on behalf of my people to keep us in your thoughts, prayers, and support in the coming months and years. May our collective attention span endure enough through the constant news cycle so that we can come together to move beyond relief to healing and prosperity. This is an opportunity. I keep trying to tell our young people on the islands who are in despair, who have low morale, that this is an opportunity for us to leapfrog technology, to create the kind of Virgin Islands, for the Virgin Islands to be the beacon in the Caribbean region, the beacon of what American might can do when it does what it's supposed to do. And it is this Congress's constitutional responsibility to the territories. The benign neglect that this Congress has gotten away with for the last 100 years needs to stop right now. And they need to stop wagging the finger and telling Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands that they have not done what they're supposed to do, when this Congress knows that they're not doing the right thing by those territories. Our formulas are different. The money that we receive is different. We get the short shrift on every bill that comes on this floor, and yet and still you expect us to stretch that out like the poor stepchild that you think we are, to make do and keep quiet. But it's going to stop right now. We cannot be quiet anymore, because not only are we hungry, 30% of the children of the Virgin Islands live in poverty, but now we're blind as well. There's no cell reception in most of the areas of the Virgin Islands. While I was down there last week, my staff and I roamed the island with our cell phones, sitting in bypasses, sitting in areas with others, trying to get a signal to plead with the National Security Council, plead with FEMA and others to do the right thing by the Virgin Islands. Given the enormity of the challenges ahead, the Virgin Islands will require the coordinated and sustained financial commitment of the United States. For this reason, I ask that members of Congress fully support inclusion of funding in forthcoming disaster supplemental packages that will aid in short-term as well as long-term relief, recovery, and reconstruction of the Virgin Islands. The international community, including the United States, has an obligation to work with affected governments to restore infrastructure, provide critical relief, and help recovery and build back our islands. We must act quickly to save lives, ensure that those in the Virgin Islands are back to the road to swift recovery. Listen, I know we're hearing that FEMA is on the ground, that supplies are there, that things are moving along, and I must admit, FEMA is on the ground. I see the supplies in the cartons, in the containers on our ports. I hear the discussions at daily briefings that go on at our local emergency management system, how they are working hand in hand with FEMA. And I believe that the Army Corps and the Department of Defense and FEMA are there, and they want to lend a hand. But something is not working, whether it's in the local government, dysfunction there, or dysfunction in communications, or dysfunction at the highest levels of the federal government. Because when I go to neighborhoods like Wim, when I go to Tutu High Rise, when I go to Coral Bay, when I go to Hannah's Rest, when I go to Frederickstead and talk with people, and they tell me they haven't had water in a week, something is wrong, and something needs to be done by this Congress that has the responsibility for the Virgin Islands. How can a child in the United States say that they don't have water? How can a child in the United States say that water is streaming over them because many of the roofs in many of these areas are completely gone? So what I wanted to do was to walk the members of Congress and walk you, Mr. Speaker, through the destruction that I have seen with my eyes in the Virgin Islands. What you see right here is a home. This is a private homeowner's home, completely gone. It looks like a construction site. It looks as if they're trying to start building, when in fact this was someone's home before. Additionally, this is another home that now looks like a construction site that people are living in. People can no longer be here. They've abandoned, they've had to leave this home. I have additional things that I'd like to show you. This is a line right now. A line of people to fill up some containers with gas so that they can keep generators going for a couple of hours a day so that their children can read, so that they can wash themselves, so they can find out what's going in the outside world. People can listen to a radio, find out what is not being said about them by others. Here's another home in the Virgin Islands. This is the kind of destruction that took place on the islands that I represent, the islands that are my home. This is off of St. John. Our transportation system between the islands has been completely obliterated. This was a ferry that was used between St. Thomas and St. John to bring goods, to bring people between those islands. The island of St. John, Cruz Bay, Chocolate Hole, Coral Bay, now being cut off, left out, because the ferry system has been down for many, many weeks. Look at this. This is what's happening in the Virgin Islands right now. This is the main street in Christiansted. If you look over here, is Government House. And this is what our roads look like after the hurricane. You can see that this roof is actually a part of the roof over here that has completely been sheared off by Hurricane Maria and strewn across the street. Lines are down, poles are down. This is a commercial business on the island of St. Croix, a business that will take months, if not a year at least, to recover. If FEMA moves quickly on supporting a small business loan so that they can have the support that they need to be able to do that. These are the things that you don't see on the news that the people of the Virgin Islands are dealing with right now. What is our greatest asset and has been for some years after our oil refinery was closed, after this Congress in 2004 changed the rules for the American Jobs Act that took away many of our knowledge-based businesses, our financial service sector, we've had to rely on tourism. And this is one of a hotel room in one of our major hotels. This is what the destruction of the hurricanes look like in the Virgin Islands right now. This is a hotel room that will not be available for the coming months for the people of the Virgin Islands to be able to sustain themselves with employment. What I'm showing you now was at one point 2 homes, 2 homeowners, families. You can see the 2 houses look literally as if a hurricane just came across them and smashed them with a fist from the top. You can barely make out what was once in these homes. These homes do no longer exist. These people have no homes. And there is no temporary shelter designation right now. People are living in shelters. Shelters in some of the few schools that are still intact, which means that where are our children going to go to school? Many of our schools have also been destroyed. What will happen to the children of the Virgin Islands? What will happen to us all? Here's what some of the roads look like when we talk about utility system and the need for why we're in the dark in the Virgin Islands right now. This is a major road. Can you imagine having this next to your house? Can you imagine this amount of transponders, transformers in front of your home? This is why most of the Virgin Islands is in the dark right now. This is what's happening on this island. This is someone's home. This is our industry. This is tourism right now in the Virgin Islands. This is a hotel room and one of our major resorts. Places like known over the world, Camille Bay on St. John. Gone, obliterated, will be no more. Will be no more for 2-3 years. What are the people of the Virgin Islands supposed to do? Are we asking for much? We're asking for support. We fight in the wars. We begged when we became part of the United States to be part of the draft because we want to take on the responsibility of American citizenship. But under the Constitution, it's this Congress, Mr. Speaker, which has responsibility for the territories, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, Northern Marianas. And I have to tell you, it's been a piss-poor job that you've been doing of that responsibility thus far. We get the short shrift in federal funding, in formulas. Let's not talk about the Affordable Care Act. We don't even have an exchange to have been upset that we lost an exchange. That was never given to us. The Virgin Islands, with 30% of the children living in poverty, still doesn't get the disproportionate share for hospitals that the rest of the United States give. Why? I can't get a straight answer about why we shouldn't have it, but we don't. Neither do the smaller island territories. This is what we're left with, and we're asking you for your support. I'm asking you for their support. I'm begging for support for the people that I represent, because many Virgin Islanders, they're not going to beg you for support. That's not in them. That's not who they are. The biggest phrase that people have right now, when I go around the islands after Irma, after Maria, both Category 5 when they struck the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I ask people, how did you make out? That's now our new greeting for one another. So good to see you. How did you make out? And people's response is continually, thank God I have life. I'm blessed. We have life. And when you have to press them to ask them what happened to your home, then they'll just shake their head. It's no more. My home is no more. But thank God I have life. I'm good. We're good. That's the kind of people who are the people of the Virgin Islands. And so they're not going to beg this Congress for support. I'm going to beg for them, because you haven't been doing it out of your own volition or what you know is right to do. You haven't done it thus far. And what's happening in Puerto Rico is happening in the Virgin Islands right now. As the sole representative here in Congress representing the Virgin Islands, I will continue the work that I have been doing in support of the island's overall recovery efforts, including facilitating generators and security for local grocery stores, businesses so Virgin Islanders can get fresh food and goods, working with local shipping companies to clear the ports and bring commerce and relief packages to the islands, coordinating with housing support for the Red Cross and local shelters, as well as rebuilding efforts of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Additionally, I will continue to update my residents and businesses around the ongoing efforts to make sure that the U.S. Virgin Islands continues to receive the attention and support it needs during these difficult times. While the devastation of this hurricane season has been felt in many parts of our country, it is imperative that we make sure our Virgin Islands continue to be remembered and supported as we begin the long and arduous process of our recovery. We are hopeful. Virgin Islands' motto is united in pride and hope. That's who we are. And I want to thank the Virgin Islanders who are living in the mainland, because they, through their efforts, have bridged the gap. Our office gets calls continually from Virgin Islands associations in places like Houston, Atlanta, New York, Tampa, Orlando, Miami. Good Virgin Islanders like Tim Duncan, who through his own efforts have brought plane loads of support to the people of the Virgin Islands, because we want to take care of ourselves. We don't want to ask for your support, but it's your responsibility, Mr. Speaker. It's the responsibility of this Congress to ensure that that's done. I think back on, as a child, hearing stories about Casper Holstein. Many of you may not know the name, but many of you may know him from gangster movies, discussions about New York at the turn of the 20th century. He was a Virgin Islander who created something that everybody calls the number system in New York. After a hurricane and a tsunami in the Virgin Islands, he of his own pocket reached in, commissioned a ship, and sent that ship filled with goods for his fellow Virgin Islanders back home. That's what's happening now, because we can't always count on the federal government to do what's right by us. We have to count on ourselves. But I'm going to make sure, and I will fight continually with those colleagues on either side of the aisle, whomever is willing to support the people of the Virgin Islands to ensure that their efforts are not in vain. Let me give you a statistic when I talk about veterans and us willing to fight. In the last 5 conflicts, Virgin Islanders have paid the ultimate price, have greater casualties, 3 times the national average per capita. We send our sons and daughters on the regular to fight our wars. That is not something, a duty that we shirk from. Are you shirking from your duty to us, of your responsibility to us? I understand, as I've said, FEMA is on the ground, but there are children who are not getting water. There are old people who are eating MREs that others have brought back to them. Is that what should be happening? Not everybody can get to a distribution center. Not everybody can carry packs of water on their shoulders, on their heads, on their back, a mile, whatever it is, to get back to their home. Because as crazy as it sounds in this day and age, not everybody owns a car. Not everybody can do that. And so this Congress has got to figure out a way. I know that the Ranking Member Cummings and I issued a request on September 29th for my good friend, and he is my friend, Trey Gowdy, Chairman of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, to express our extremely grave concerns about the dire status of recovery efforts in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and requesting that the committee hold an emergency hearing this week with officials from the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, as well as from the White House. The committee this week, I know, has no hearings, no business meeting, no activity scheduled for the entire week. And this issue is in desperate need of rapid and robust oversight. Millions of American citizens residing in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands are facing massive calamities, widespread disease and death, and we need to help them now. Lieutenant General Russell Honore, who commanded Joint Task Force Katrina, recently warned the administration's response to this humanitarian crisis is replaying a scene from Katrina. Admiral Paul Zukampf, the Coast Guard Commandant, warned this week that the victims feel betrayed. They feel isolated, and they're probably getting a sense of betrayal of, well, where is the Calvary? Everybody else has seen what other individuals in Puerto Rico and elsewhere have said, and they're concerned for what's happening. Now, I want my colleagues to know, I'm not necessarily saying in this hearing that it's the federal government's fault. If it's the fault of local government, then shame on them, and let's expose that for what it is. Because all I'm concerned about is the welfare of the people of the Virgin Islands. Not protecting local government, not protecting bureaucracy, whether it be at the federal level or at the local level. Let's have this hearing. Let's get that information out. The fact that there is no hospital, no functioning hospital in the Virgin Islands should scare the heck out of us. I was in the hospital at Juan Luis on Wednesday and watched doctors and others creating lists of people, how to get them off the island, how to get our disproportionate amount of dialysis patients off the island, how they were going to deal with those who have shunts, heart disease patients in the coming weeks with one makeshift operating room that they were working out of. How are they going to do that? How are they going to operate out of a tent that the Army was setting up when we still have a month and a half of hurricane season in the Virgin Islands, in the Caribbean? We're not going to be able to continually ship people off the island, fix them up, triage them, and get them off. Our labor and delivery. What if there's a child with special needs when they're born? What about neonatal services, if that's needed, for a child that's born during this time? God help us. And if you don't act, God help you in this time of need of your fellow Americans. I want to thank those members who have reached out to me and who have expressed their desire to support and help us. Thank you. I'm calling on you now for that help, to make sure that the people of the Virgin Islands do not continually feel forgotten. I want to thank House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi, who recently issued a statement calling for the swift and immediate financial commitment to help rebuild the Virgin Islands. I want to thank my Republican colleague Jennifer Gonzalez Colon of Puerto Rico, who she and I have been continually texting. I remember texting with her through Maria as she and her brother were holding the door of their home in Puerto Rico, trying not to ensure that Maria got in that house. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your sisterhood as we both go through this. And however you need me, I'm there for you. Republicans must join Democrats. Democrats must join Republicans in Congress to address the needs of the communities in crisis by swiftly passing a robust relief package that provides assistance not only today, but throughout the long road to recovery. This is our chance in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico to show American might, to show American technology, to show American strength. President Trump, you have complained about the other islands not wanting to support us when we go to the United Nations or the Organization of American States against places like Venezuela or Cuba or China. Show that they can vote with us because Americans do what they're supposed to do for the islands that they have responsibility over. How are they going to trust us if we can't even take care of what belongs to us? Our fellow Americans in the Virgin Islands deserve to know that their government will be there for them without question or hesitation. I want to thank the country of Denmark, our previous owner. Many of you know that the Virgin Islands have had 7 flags that have been flown over those islands. We are a very valuable place. We are geographically situated in the mouth of the Caribbean Basin to support the United States. That was for why we were purchased in 1917. But we have remained close ties with Denmark. And I want to thank the ambassador and the prime minister who reached out and said that they wanted to support the territory and submitted the request of the Danish government to our own U.S. government to bring their own additional emergency management agency to the Virgin Islands in support of ongoing efforts in the areas such as healthcare, water purification systems and experts, command control support, logistics for clearing and security support. Thank you for your continued commitment to us. Let that not be the only commitment that we have. I know that the federal government, the executive branch, is doing its part. Let this Congress do its part. Let this Congress show in this time of crisis that it can rise above partisanship and support the islands of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Let those 3.6 million Americans living in those territories, more than many states in this country, let them know that they have the full support of this Congress, of the American people, that they're not just a soundbite, that they're not just a rum and coke and a pina colada when you decide that you want to get away from where you live, that we mean more than that to you, that we are indeed full citizens in this American experience, in this democracy. This time I yield back.